So before I get started, I'm not gonna be addressing any of the pieces that I'm doing tonight except for this first piece. Simply because this first piece wasn't actually a poem. It started off as a letter that I wrote to my mother. My mother, I had got incarcerated after Desert Storm. I went haywire, nuts, and it was incarcerated for about 2 years of my life. And my mother couldn't believe that I had done the things that I had got incarcerated for, so I ended up writing her a letter about this whole section of my life that she missed because she worked 3 jobs to put me through Catholic school, so she wasn't home. So I was left to my own devices. Mama, you carried up the Calvary, your burdens of life joys through misery. Resurrected before you was 1/3 of your greatness personified in me. Yet I cannot begin to tell you what I've been through. You wanted to raise a Christ-like leader. I, lacking a baptismal and male guidance, chose the company of thieves, thugs, and drug dealers to provide a father figure. We embraced each other with triggers, played hide and go seek with poverty and liquor, for sobriety was a constant reminder that I had to do better than my environment. Mama, sometimes I wonder how things might have been different had I had a positive male influence. Our block was always packed with wild packs of ghetto bastards. All of us had daddies that we call uncle as long as the sex lasted. All of us had girlfriends that called us daddy as long as the sex lasted. And you know better than anyone that no one could tell me nothing, for I knew it all. You paid attention to these broken-hearted, street-shackled, shattered masculine images who took our dollars to cop our spirits. Sipping fifths of wisdom, passing knowledge wrapped in brown paper bags. Drunken lessons had me believing if a man walks away from a fight, he's a punk. And if he walks away from a girl, he's a fag. We form crews like Hooterville, and avenues have knack lines like, baby, with all that light you shine, the sun has got to be mad at you. To supplement the diet that you couldn't provide me with, I enlisted my neighbors into an army of drug-addicted slave laborers where I cracked that whip. Yo, let me get one of those for Ace. I cracked that whip. You know me, man. Hit me off now, tomorrow I'll be straight. I cracked that whip. Yo, I ain't got no money, but my wife, she turning me in a trick. I cracked that whip. This VCR was like brand new. Is that the best you could give me for it? Yet for what? I did this for what? Working for the man system is wicked, but my lifestyle was twice as corrupt. Yet for what, mama? I did this for what? To be socially accepted amongst bacteria infesting an inner city cut. Yet not once stomach bubbling. Yet not once soul troubled in. Yet not once did I consider you, mom. Without words showed me what a real man is supposed to. Single-handedly raising a family. Butter pecan toffee, soul, and mahogany southern refuge. Provided an education that to you was unobtainable. Though living conditions sometimes seem unstable, food was always on the table. Most times hold down a job for each child you bear. 3, teaching a bigger lesson than I could ever learn from these streets. Responsibility. Yet not once did I consider you mom who bore the cross of maternity. The floor of your basement apartment, Mount Calvary. The woman you knew yourself to be died, crucified, and your new life resurrected in me. Convict with half a brain will tell you. Only 2 reasons to be incarcerated: love and stupidity. Maternal twins so close in identity they're often mistaken answering to each other's names. Unless you've done hard time, you're just an inmate. Convicts know how to carry themselves, but there's a misconception amongst convicts. The world is a prison without walls, and what you do in here, you do out there, and I don't talk about this much. I almost missed this. First fight, Monday Night Football. Dallas versus New York. Giants won, I lost. New cell. Andre Bizzo and James Moulton decided I really needed to learn how to fight. Everyone in the 16-bed cell wrapped hands in towels. I, the monkey in the middle, learned to duck and swing, take a punch while delivering to Huntsville. 3 weeks of 118 degrees. You would hear a concession of toilets flushing like musical instruments as men. Cool feet in the same metal bowl, they shitted. At night, you can see the second tier reflection in 15-foot windows. Ever chill, a 5-foot ball-headed frame. Grab bars bounced on tippy toes as we freestyle battle flows, holding whole conversations and rhyme schemes as other cells pounded beats, using pins to metal desks, fists to steel walls, and black men sounding like they should have been singing songs to God. Drop chorus lines and hooks about finding redemption and being born again crooks, and I almost missed this. There's a literati whose intellect surpasses a dropped-out educational profile. Search out young men smart enough to use the information passed to them. Distinguish each other by Mason codes. What are you searching for? I'm searching for the light. How far have you come? As far as east is to west, my cellie. 17 years for stabbing 2 white men to death. Said if I ever repeated these things, kill me. On my last night, he asked me, "You gonna miss us, ain't you, youngster? The parties, the camaraderie?" "Yeah," I replied. "You know what institutionalized is, youngster? The prison without walls isn't the world outside, but the world of your mind. It's the idea of possessing things you don't own. Walk into a classroom calling a desk yours. Hustle on the block, you call it yours. They assign you a cell and you call it yours." How do you fight an idea, youngster? Especially one that's ingrained in the psyche as institutionalization. With another idea. Don't ever miss this, youngster. Don't ever miss us fight that idea. Because if I ever see you in here again, I'm gonna make you my bitch. I'm gonna sell your ass for a moon pie. Make you a product of this institution, and I don't talk about this much. I usually say I was locked up for my love of stupidity. But if you persist, I'll let you know. It's really a bad idea. I sit up in bed. 12 gauge slug, sweat from sawed-off double-barrel pores saturate my forehead. As night blanketed the city and it snugly tucked another young brother in for infinite slumber. Who was it this time? Little Mans, Junebug, John, Rajan. The list of soldiers gone is already so long, bombers are borrowing walls and other blocks for miracles. In my neighborhood, it's desensitized to funerals since the occurrence started happening more common than often. And man, I'm glad I got out the game. Inhabiting inner city habitats is hazardous enough without haphazardly hustling mind states habitually dropping us like bad habits. I live in a land of black on black addicts where Negroes fiend status. So if you got it, don't show it unless you can hold it. But these stop it nothing jackets just got to have it. And we can't blame racism or even the media for its my very own people that set the value of black life, the price of a leather jacket, green papers, gold chains, or a pair of sneakers. And man, I'm glad I got out the game. Co-operating in covert operation genocide. Code name, Get Mine. The agenda was to bring my community down by spreading the disease of getting high. Turned a blind eye to these families who had nothing to do with me. I was too through with poverty to hear Janice baby holler for her last dollar went to my wallet while her child went to bed hungry. And man, I'm glad I got out the game. I just did a bid where an elder took me into my rites of passage to positive change. Says I couldn't think past my vocab, or broken language kept in slang. I, like my brothers on the corner, just wanted to hang. It was my dialect that kept me in chains. I was a legacy to slavery, not because I wanted to be, but because that's what my thinking had made me. Never learning how to consciously make the decision to be free had allowed my environment to decide who and what I could be. Well, yesterday I was released. Took this new philosophy with me back to the street. Told my boys on the block, I don't know about you, but as far as I'm concerned, this hustling stuff has got to cease. They was like, Negro, please. Everyone knows the laws of ghetto reciprocity states there's only two ways out the game. Life sentence and life deceased. On that note, I turned my back and said, peace. My baby! Screams awakened me. Who was late the rest this time, I just got to see, because all of us on this block are like family. As I make my way through the crowd, I notice the voice sounds vaguely familiar. As I say to myself, man, this just cannot be. I sprawled across a lifeless corpse in the middle of the street, wailing out, my baby! It was my mama. And the body she was holding was me.
My name is David Ellison. I'm a public defender. I'm a lawyer. I went to law school. I went to Roger Williams Law School. Grew up in Providence, still live in Providence. I worked for the state of Massachusetts, the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, and I'm employed as a public defender. So this means that I'm a lawyer who represents people who are accused of crimes who cannot afford their own lawyer. I've had some experience with internships in different states while I was in law school. I worked for a public defender in Mississippi for a summer. I worked for the public defender in Alaska for a summer. I went to Baltimore for a week, worked for a public defender there, and I spent a year, my last year of law school, working in Providence underneath my professor, representing indigent clients there as well. So I've been a lawyer for about 18 months now, so I'm just going to give you kind of the breakdown of kind of like what I see day in and day out. All right, so basically, I call the criminal justice system the sausage factory. That basically means that when you make sausages, you take all of the leftover parts of the animal, you grind it all up, and out comes this sausage, this piece that people like to eat. And the idea is that if you knew how that was made, you might not like it anymore. And the same thing is true for the criminal justice system. I like to call it a criminal system because I don't believe there's much justice that actually happens in the system. But, so if you hear a lot, people watch Law and Order, they watch Dateline, they think, oh, this is great, let's go get these bad guys. And then as a result, you know, that's the attitude that happens, and then what really happens behind closed doors, and not really closed doors, it's open to the public, but what's really happening is much different than what you see on TV. So what is a public defender? It comes from the 6th Amendment of the United States Constitution, which guarantees you the right to a lawyer. This has been interpreted in Supreme Court cases, Gideon versus Wainwright, which was decided about 50 years ago, and subsequent cases after that, that basically interpreted the idea of the 6th Amendment that if you could go to jail, if you were charged with an offense that could put you in jail, not that you would be put in jail, and you were deemed indigent, then you were supposed to get a lawyer to help you with your defense. Okay, who qualifies for a public defender? You have to be, like I said, charged with a criminal offense that you could go to jail on, and then on top of it, you have to be deemed indigent. In Massachusetts, they define indigent as somebody who's below the poverty line, about 125%, so they give you a little extra leeway. Or if you're somebody that's on government assistance, this is Social Security income, unemployment benefits, disability, if you're on food stamps, then you should automatically qualify. What this basically breaks down to is, unless you're on government assistance, if you make less than $13,000 a year, $14,000 a year for a single male not married with children, then you get a public defender. So as a side note, there's a lot of people making between like $15,000 and $35,000 a year who get in trouble. They don't get a public defender. They have to go out and hire their own lawyer, and they may be living paycheck to paycheck. So that's a separate issue. But I'm going to concentrate more on indigent clients that I work with day in and day out. So who are my clients? My clients, I've categorized, this is all my opinion. There's books on research out on this if you want to find numbers, but what I see day in and day out, everybody, like I said, is living in poverty. So that's 100% of my clients are all poor. And then I see a lot of other same situations, same patterns over and over. A lot of people who are mentally ill. This includes people with a diagnosis or no diagnosis. This includes people, I would say, that the popular mental illnesses that I see are schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, anxiety disorder, panic disorder, and depression. I see that very common in a lot of my clients. And then another category is substance abuse. I see a lot of people who are abusing alcohol. I see that's a popular one. I think that causes a lot of criminal activity. It causes people to get in fights. It causes a lot of sexual assaults. You can drink and drive on alcohol. That can get you in some trouble. So I see alcohol more for the effects of alcohol and how that can bring people in the criminal justice system. Another popular drug that seems to be abused is heroin. Heroin, I know that's getting very popular in the news lately, and I have my own takes on that. But I don't think people really get in trouble when they're on heroin. It's when they're off of heroin that they start getting into criminal activity. I guess doing heroin is criminal as well, but when people use heroin, they tend to just mellow out and just chill. The problem, though, is when you're off heroin, what ends up happening is that your body desperately wants to be on heroin again, and you go through withdrawals. And these can be, from what I've understood from talking to people, very severe, very difficult to deal with. Your body, the inside of your body feels like it's tearing apart. You are vomiting, you have diarrhea. You are just basically in the worst pain that you could possibly imagine. And you will do literally anything to make sure that you do not have that pain again. So I see a lot of people, to get that heroin, they commit thefts, they commit larcenies to get the money, break into houses to get the money for heroin. To give an example of somebody living in poverty, I represented a guy one time. He was charged with trespassing, and he had 2 counts of it. And these places he's trespassing at are, let's call them fast food corporations, okay? I just don't want to say the name, but you can figure it out. And so it's not somebody's personal residence. And he's got 2 charges, each of which carries 30 days in jail. And I couldn't meet with him because he was homeless. I couldn't call him because he didn't have a phone number. And then what ended up happening is I got a call later on, about a month or so later, from one of my colleagues saying that he was in court. And apparently he picked up a third trespassing case. And there was a lawyer for that day, and they represented him, and a bail was set at like $500, and he couldn't make the bail. So he was in jail. And this lawyer neglected to call me to let me know that this was happening. So he was sitting in jail for about a month, and I had no idea. So I go represent him, I talk to him. Of course, he's been diagnosed with schizophrenia and bipolar. He's not taking his medications, which is also another problem with being poor, is you don't have the access to health care that maybe somebody in middle class or upper class family could have. So it's not being regulated like it could be. Then I talked to the prosecutor and I said, can you make me an offer on this? And the first thing she says to me is, she looks at the criminal complaint and she sees that his address says homeless. And she says to me, oh, homeless street in Fall River. I haven't seen that one before. And I thought she was making a joke at me, and I didn't really find it funny. So it was kind of just like, oh, let's move on then. And I want to just preface that by saying there's a lot of prosecutors who do a fantastic job for our society. And sometimes this is more of an extreme version. But that's what she said to me. And I said, can you make me an offer on this case? And so maybe you guys could do the math, 30 days for trespassing, 3 trespassings. She says to me, oh, he can do 90 days in jail. And I'm like, it's not really much of an offer on this case. But we ended up going unagreed in front of the judge. I convinced her to dismiss one of them because it wasn't really trespassing. And the judge gave him 30 days and credited it, and he moved out. But he had to plead guilty to actually 2 of the trespassings. And so that's how being homeless and not having the money can really affect you just pleading guilty to a case. I had another one, to give an example of substance abuse. I had a client who I represented who this kind of fits the story a lot of that I see with addiction with heroin. He was a normal guy. No, I don't like to use the word normal actually, but he was just an average person. And he was a union laborer for a while. And he was making good salary from what he told me, $75,000, something like that, a year. And eventually he had surgery. And then after he had surgery, they gave him Percocets or Vicodin or one of those pain medications, which most people don't realize that's an opiate. That's the same thing that's in heroin. So that's prescribed to him by his doctors. Eventually, after a while, they say, oh, you can't take this anymore. You've had the surgery, enough is enough. It's taken off of it. And I want people to understand that you can keep getting Percocets and Vicodin on the street if you're willing to pay, $20, $25, $30 a pill. You can get this stuff on the street. Now, a lot of people do that because they want it and they're addicted to it because they've just been exposed to an opiate. Then what ends up happening is, after a while, they can't afford that anymore, so they go to heroin, which costs about $6 for a bag. So that's a cheaper high, and it's more potent. So that's what he basically ended up doing. Now, the reason why he was with me was because he was on probation for stealing things, and he ended up, the police got called because he overdosed. And it was 911 call, so the paramedics came, the police come in after the paramedics, they used some kind of drug to wake him up. He wakes up and they say, what's wrong? And he said, I used heroin. And so the police then decided, okay, we're gonna arrest him for possession. So they arrested him, and then now this was a reason to violate him for his probation. His probation officer said, I'm gonna put you in jail for 2 years, and I'm gonna save your life. And he was in my office with the medical records like this thick, explaining to me how he cannot go to jail because he would die in jail. And I said to him, I'm gonna see what I can do. I figured out that Massachusetts recently enacted a law about 1.5 years ago that if you get a call for an overdose, that person and the person who called gets immunity from prosecution on simple possession, which is what he was charged with. So I ended up getting that charge dismissed. And then eventually, through talking with his probation officer, they eventually agreed not to put him in jail. I got an email about 6 months later from my secretary saying, a secretary that we all share, saying basically that we found out that he had passed away about 6 months later. So for somebody like myself who's 27 years old, this starts to get really, I would say, like heavy, realizing all of this stuff. Somebody going to jail, somebody possibly, now has passed away. But it makes me feel good if anyone's out there. I see a lot of college students and maybe high school students as well. This is the kind of career that, at the end of the day, I can say, I helped that guy get his last little wish, which was not to go to jail, which was to not die in jail. At least that's what I'm assuming, because I don't know the circumstances of his death. So what the motivations that I think that I have as a public defender, I switch these from time to time. I wear a different hat every day, because sometimes it's a lot of losing cases in some way. Some days I look at myself as a social worker. Other days I look at myself as a warrior, which means that I'm going to hold the government to a high standard of, if you're going to take somebody's liberty, you need to do it right. You need to follow the Constitution and what that says. So if somebody is, people say, oh, how do you represent somebody who's guilty? Well, if a police officer comes up to you on the street, just decides to go in your pockets for no reason, pulls out some cocaine or something, how do you represent that guy? He had cocaine on him. To me, I'm enforcing the Constitution as well, that your Fourth Amendment rights that protect you against unreasonable searches and seizures. And if his rights were violated, then the case should go away. That's the way I look at it. The Constitution is more important than any one individual case. That's the way I look at it. And then system changer. We have more people in jail in this country per capita than any other country in the world. We're number one. We're ahead of Russia, we're ahead of China, we're ahead of Iran, we're ahead of Saudi Arabia. All these countries that we talk about human rights violations all the time. The land of the free, the United States of America, has the most of its own people's freedom that's been deprived than anywhere else in the world. So just to give you kind of a quick idea of how I think, just run through a quick case and how being poor could affect you in the criminal justice system. When you get arrested, you get brought into court. When you're brought into court, they set a bail on you. The prosecutor asks for bail, the judge sets a bail. And when they set the bail, the idea is you have to pay this money in order to get out. And then at the end of the case, you get the money back. Some lawyers in my office call this ransom. Kind of could be looked at that way. But they want to make sure that you show up in court. So they set the bail, and you have to post this. Now, people don't realize this. Jail and prison are two different things. Jail is where you're at awaiting trial. You haven't been convicted of anything yet. Prison is where you go when you've been sentenced. So if you can't make the bail, you go to jail. So I've had clients who've had a $300 bail and could not make it. And this is probably one of the most depressing things you'll see as a public defender, because the person is literally just sitting there in jail, incarcerated. And I had a client once like this. He had a $300 bail. He was diagnosed schizophrenic, and he was younger than me, and he was in jail. And this is where he's at for something he claimed he did not do. So this is this saying that I like, that every inmate, every lawyer, everybody in the court system knows, is that those who go to court from jail tend to go back to jail, and those who go to court from the street tend to go back to the street, which is why everybody knows this, and you want to make bail. So what's going to happen with this, what's going to happen in this scenario is I'm going to go to court with the client after he's been in jail for a month. And I'm going to go to the prosecutor and I'm going to say, can you give me an offer? There's different types of offers that they can give you. They give you a time served offer, which would just credit the month that he did in jail if he pleads guilty. Now this is a felony too on this kind of case. So he'd have to plead guilty to a felony, and then at that point he could be let out of jail. Another thing that could happen is they could say, we'll give you a year in jail, we'll credit the 30 days you've already done, now we want 11 months hanging over your head. This is suspended. We'll put you on probation for 2 years, and the minute you break any laws, we put you back in for 11 months, no ifs, ands, or buts, You get a hearing, but at the hearing, the standard in Massachusetts is more likely than not that you violated your probation. So you could actually have a case where the case gets dismissed or you're found not guilty and you still could be seen as violating your probation, even just by getting arrested. So I'm gonna probably at that point, you know, in that scenario, go down to the courthouse lockup where his freedom is deprived, and I'm gonna say to him, you know, they made you an offer, let's make it easy, time served offer. Plead guilty to this felony and you can get out today. Now jail, people don't realize this is torture. Unless you've been there, I've never been incarcerated myself, but through talking to my clients, this is basically torture. Especially if you take somebody who's mentally ill and put them in there, or somebody who's going through withdrawals of some kind of substance. It's a terrible place to be. Nobody likes being there. And I'm going to say to them, you know, he's going to say, oh, I told you I was innocent, I didn't do this. And then that's when I would have the conversation with him, like, okay, well, we'll put the case on for trial, and then we got to wait another month. Now we're at 60 days. And on that date, if the witnesses against you are not all there, then we're gonna, the government can ask for an extension, another 30 days. So you'd be sitting in jail 60, 90, maybe 120 days before you actually get your trial. Then at your trial, I'm looking at the police report, witness statements, and hopefully I've done an investigation on my own. And I'll say, the witnesses against you are gonna say X, Y, Z, and you could be convicted. So you're rolling the dice at this point. We don't really know what's gonna happen. And at that point, I'll say to him, you know, what do you want to do? And I would say 99.9% of people in that scenario say, I'll just admit to something I didn't do, just so I can get out of jail. And then when that happens, what you have, let's say he does that, he's now a convicted felon, which means that he can be discriminated against jobs. Every job can then ask him about that and say, we don't want him for that reason. He could be discriminated against with housing. He could be discriminated against for certain kind of government benefits. If this is a drug charge, he's not going to get student loans to go to college. He could get discriminated against and not go to college. So now you basically just put, because of this, because of the fact he couldn't make the $300 bail, he pleads guilty to this felony, he now can get discriminated against the rest of his life. He's basically now, what is he going to do? You know, can't get a job, can't find a place to live, can't get education. It's really hard to move up in society if you can't do those three things. And then what ends up happening is he could get back sucked in the system again. Next time he comes in, they're not going to give him 30 days, they're going to give him 60. Because they're going to say, we already gave you 30. His bail's not going to be $300, they're going to see he has a record with committed time on it. It's going to be $1,000, it's going to be $2,000. Not going to make that. If he didn't make $300, how's he going to make this? So I want people to understand that that's how being poor can affect how you navigate through the criminal justice system. And with that being said, you know, my personal feelings, now that I have a little bit of a platform, is that we have to do better than this as a country. We have to end this mass incarceration. We have predominantly people in here that are mentally ill. They don't belong in jail. We have people who are addicted to drugs. They don't belong in jail. And these are the people, like I said, when you have so many people in America incarcerated, these are the people that are there. And it's not right, it's not justice. So thank you for listening to me.
Hi everyone, my name is Stephen Dy. I'm here today to tell you a little bit about racial profiling and how it has affected my community, and a little bit of the work that PrYSM has done around it. So, first off, let me explain what PrYSM is. PrYSM is P-R, lowercase r, Y-S-M, stands for the Providence Youth Student Movement. We're a grassroots organization out here dedicated to advocating for the Southeast Asian community, because who else is going to do it? So, I'm an alumni from PrYSM. I graduated, but I still do work because I love the organization, you know? And I was in one of their core programs called SOUL, Students Organizing for Unity and Liberation. I know, there's a lot of acronyms. I got this. So, growing up, I was one of those stubborn kids that didn't care about anything, just living in ignorance, you know? I lived in the west end of Providence, for most of my life. And all I constantly saw were people of my color and my background stopped, searched, and violated their rights. But being the kid I was, I didn't care. I thought it was normal, you know? It happened every day to me, my cousins, my brother, my uncles, my friends, pretty much everybody. I'm pretty sure it happened to you too. Or someone close to you. So, you probably couldn't find someone walking on the streets that didn't get pulled over before. I even saw kids that never did anything wrong in their life. I've known personally, continuously getting stopped and searched. It got to a point where people just gave in and just let it happen because it just wasn't worth the hassle. That was life growing up. And when I joined PrYSM, I didn't really think much of it because I wasn't informed enough. But when PrYSM really broke things down for me, I got really into the work because everything they talked about, everything they did, it related to me in my life. And it affected me very strongly because when I joined Soul, I wasn't doing so well with authority. Before I had gotten into PrYSM, I had been court ordered to join an after-school program because I was, how do you say it? I don't know the term. It's like, I forget. I was one of those kids. So I set out to find a language class for myself. I wanted to get more in touch with my native community, you know, because I was never connected like that until I joined PrYSM. When I went to look for it, all they pretty much had for Southeast Asians, the programs for Southeast Asians were PrYSM. PrYSM was the only thing out there for us. So after I joined, they showed me that the police were meant to protect and serve, not to stop and search. They were here for us. The things that the police were doing, their approaches and policies, they weren't okay. They needed change. Not to be stopped or shut down or shown they're doing things the wrong way. Nobody wants to make things harder than it already is. We just wanted change. People of my background needed that change. It just wasn't fair to us. So we had to do something. That's when something in me had told myself, Steven, it's up to you. If you're not gonna do it, no one will. And nothing will change. So I got my shit together and we started to make plans. We got all our core programs in PrYSM together and came up with a campaign that affected all of us. The racial profiling campaign. We mostly did work around the youth because that's where we were getting hit hard. That's where it affected us the most. PrYSM had done a survey back in 2008 for the Southeast Asian youth in Rhode Island. And 71% of the Southeast Asian males that had done the survey between the ages of 14 and 28 were accused of being in a gang even though they weren't. 71%. That's a problem. You might be asking you, why does this matter? Well, that's because in the Southeast Asian community, gangs were a tough subject. It was touchy. Nobody really wanted to talk about it. Growing up, anyone Southeast Asian was thought to be in a gang. Even in school, my classmates used to tease me and ask me, "Yo, you a blood? You a Crip?" It was funny at first, but then after a while it gets to you, you know? Shortly after, we put the campaign together, we learned about the gang database, something that the gang unit in Providence had started up. Show of hands, who knows what a gang database is? I guess because nobody is informed. So, the gang database is a tool used by the police to identify, track, and monitor gang-involved youth. The Providence Police claims that it contains records of over 1,400 gang members and their associates. I want to ask you all a question. Can you guess what percentage of the database has actual gang members in it? 5? 2?
15. Wow.
You're all wrong.
1.
The truth is, no one really knows. It could be 70%, it could be 10%. But that's a problem too. As that was happening, PrYSM had set up a meeting with the police commissioner and the gang unit to talk about the gang database. We didn't get anywhere. It was just pretty much a cycle. We kept on talking about the same thing. Providence was like Iraq, and the war on drugs, and this and that. It didn't pertain to anything we were trying to talk about. And they claimed that they didn't have a gang database. It was just a folder. So we set up a second meeting with them. And again, we got nowhere. We were fed up. Soon after that, we heard about a gang enhancement bill, which gave any gang member enhanced penalties for any gang-related crimes they've done. So that could be an added sentence of up to 6 months to 5 years. And no one knows if they're in the gang database or not. They're not informed of this. They're just in there, and you will never know. That was an even bigger problem. The legal definition for a criminal street gang is an ongoing organization, association, or group of 3 or more persons, whether formal or informal, having as one of its primary activities the commission of criminal or delinquent acts, having identifiable names or common identifiable signs, colors, or symbols, and whose members individually or collectively engage or have engaged in a pattern of criminal activity. So, just to break that down, that could be just one of your school sports teams, loitering in a park after school. That could be legally defined as a gang. And that was it. That was where I've had it. That's where we all had it. So, no more was this system going to oppress me or my people. And for 3 years, we went to the State House with huge groups of people every month, from every minority, to oppose this bill. And each year, we were successful. And the bill is not proposed any longer. So that's a big one. We became more and more aware of the problem, and that is the first step. Even if you don't want to do anything, at least pass the knowledge along. This affects everyone, so everyone needs to know. The first step to solving a problem is acknowledging there is one. So please, spread the word.
Hi everybody, my name is Alex, I'm 18 years old. And I was in the same program as Steven and PrYSM, so we go like way back into it. I got a question who here has problems?
Yeah!
Everybody, right? Alright, so I'm gonna relate to you guys today. I wrote a piece, it's called Problems. Problems. I want you to see what I want you to see. But isn't that what everyone wants from you and me? It's a painful world with locks and keys. And I just want to be able to open up a little bit. And when you cough and you breathe, the very thing that's pumping blood into your streams, the same color we shed in floods when we disagree. Now where does all of this come from? Our problems to ourselves are key, because we would much rather isolate ourselves than be discreet. Before you even try to reconcile on your phone, you'll tweet, and then go post a cliche quote on Instagram relating to your defeats. Talk about utilizing technology. More than half of you probably checking your text or your phone rather than acknowledging me. But I don't blame y'all, because I've learned to modestly, even if it was not my place, to give out an apology. A skill I have to master remarkably in order for me to cope in a society filled with dishonesty and hypocrisy. And now that I've gotten your attention, let's take a look into my album of photography. When I was 6 or 7 years old, I stole all of my sister's cash. Beneath the mattress of my mom's bed was where it was all stashed. When I got caught, you could call my dad the Hulk with that bat to my ass. Shit swung so fast, it was probably faster than Flash. And then after, he asked me, why did I take it? I told him I wanted to be rich, and we was poor, and I hated it. He beat my ass even more. I was thinking, what's wrong with that statement? Last time I checked, we had rights and opinions. But then, that's where I had it all wrong. It's situational ethics. You decide whether it was morally wrong. No matter what you say, think, or feel, deep down inside, only you know if it was real. Moral of the story is, a problem will always be a problem. Regardless of how big or small, everyone has this, and we all have to resolve it. Thank you. That's it.
Dear Mr. President, I don't like waking every morning thinking about my daughters and the possibility of today being my last before I take my first step. Several of my friends have seen me holding back tears recently while explaining I no longer feel safe in this skin. I read a statistic that a black man is murdered every 28 hours by law enforcement. Before I left to go on a 10-day silent meditation, Renisha McBride, 19, was shot and killed for asking for help after a car accident. Tyson Jerome Barnett, an African-American mailman, shot and killed for doing his job in a white neighborhood. I posted on Facebook the other day. I felt like I had met Jesus, just to find out he was a homophobic, meth-smoking, racist redneck. On that day, I met Bruce, a Vipassana hero, who brought meditation to Donaldson State Penitentiary in Alabama, who when I approached him thought I was out to rob him. I didn't ask to be born, let alone in this world under these conditions. I can actually die just because my gang color affiliation is skin. Yet at the end of the day, we are all cotton candy sunsets dissolving on memory taste buds like tongues tasting sonnets. We exist not only in our bodies, but in the thoughts and hearts of others. So why would I choose chemical negative as my last snapshot interaction? The point is to make every moment a don't care who's watching dance. A love like you possess the last little bit of love left in the universe, and the only thing keeping it alive is to plant it fiercely in the hearts of everyone you meet, making it brush fire fast contagious. And I get it now. Somehow, each and every single one of us are soulmates. Come to this planet with the choice to crash into one another like high tide ocean water, scorching the thirst of sand beaches, or like hot lead careening into black flesh for nothing less than to prove the point that the cost of freedom is the price of love. Dear Mr. President, you are nowhere near Trayvon Martin as I am as close to Oscar Grant. But we love our daughters princess equal, and I swear, I love my daughters, just not in the image I built of expectation and personal unmanifested dreams. They could be Black Malibu Barbie or Golden Globe, red carpet, Gabourey, Sadeghi beautiful, and I won't be mad. But I hate waking up thinking I might lose my life behind stop, search, and seize open season on African ascendants, when not only am I American, I am a Desert Storm veteran. But you, police officer bulletproof. Vocabulary lacks the cause to love like no tomorrow. My black skin makes waking lawless movement, a vigilante trigger finger happy accident. For this reason, I orchestrate every father-daughter moment, moonlight handheld walk soft, first kiss sacred, arms to fall in love deep, and competition for secret crushes. Dear Mr. President, I know we can't pinky promise this no more than I can make the monsters beneath my girls' beds more beautiful, or you can refuse to see America is beating the black out of me. But Les Brown says 96% of the people that will help you live your dreams are people you don't know. I have a dream, Mr. President, and it's simply to live long enough to see my daughters live out theirs.
So if anyone has any comments or questions about anything that they saw tonight, just raise your hand and I'll try to call on you. Anybody up there wants to say anything?
Did you guys like the performance?
Good evening, and thank you sincerely for your performance. This question is for David, and it's about the CORI system, or policies and procedures, for people who get public offenders, public defendants. What you do. Massachusetts. So me and my colleague here work with young people in juvenile justice, supporting them to get their CORI sealed as young people. Yeah. How does that process work for the people that you work with, predominantly people who are above the age of 18?
All right, so for people who don't know, CORI, what she's talking about is basically your criminal records, like stands for something. I can't remember it off the top of my head. In Massachusetts, your juvenile record is, from what I understand, supposed to be sealed. However, when they come up into court as adults, we all see it. The judges and lawyers, we all see that. And that's not supposed to be taken into account, but for sentencing purposes, I see it's used a lot. For Massachusetts, it's very complicated the way the records work. For adults, we don't really do any sealing as a public defender. We don't seal records. If the case, sealing is when your case is dismissed to try and make it so nobody can see that. We don't really do that. It's supposed to not show up when you apply for employers. They're not supposed to see it.
Yeah.
If you apply to be a police officer, if you apply to work at a jail, they might be able to see it no matter what. It's kind of a loaded question somehow. But, I think for adults, I don't really like it. It's like once you get arrested, it's there. And when you seal it, it says in your record, I believe, sealed. So then when it says in your record sealed, a judge, say you're getting charged with just possession of drugs, something small. A judge doesn't know whether or not you were charged with rape, or whether you're charged with murder, or just simple possession, and all they'll see is sealed. So yeah, there's definitely a lot that could be improved in that whole process, I think.
Thanks.
Brad?
I was just going to say that the CORI laws were changed so that for adults, they can apply after 5 years for misdemeanor to have their case expunged, and every 10 years for felony, but you have to remain clean over the entire time. It starts again should you get caught for anything from a dirty urine to whatever. So it's an extraordinarily challenging system. Massachusetts at least has an opportunity to offer that, but for instance, in Rhode Island, they still have an expungement process where they would actually get rid of the entire record, but it's extraordinarily difficult, and the AG's office is almost entirely against actually allowing that to happen. So youth are one of the few categories where it actually something can happen.
I wondered what happened when they got, of age, past 18, so that's actually more scary than I was hoping it would be.
Yeah, I think we got some people who still have some of those things hanging over them. Yeah. Anybody else over here? Yeah.
I just want to tell you guys you're doing a great thing. I've been in prison myself, and for being a poor person from a large family, you don't have any money. It's really, really tough, and especially when you're not educated. And in Rhode Island, with all over the world, I see going on even more now, is racial, and that's a tough thing because so many young people who are going into prison trying to support their family because either their mom's not there or their dad, and they end up getting caught for doing things like that. And for the system, a lot of them do help them out, but like that man was saying about being expunged, when you're younger and you get something on your record, a lot of them don't understand, they're not too educated, and they have that risk for the rest of their lives on there. And I want to let you know, I do Providence Books to Bars. We send books nationwide to help out these people who are in prison, who want to get their lives back together. And we do a lot of speaking. Thank you. And you guys are great.
David, do you know the percentage of cases that plead guilty as opposed to going to trial in Massachusetts?
I don't know specifically in Massachusetts, but it's probably over 95% of people plead.
Even in Massachusetts?
Yes. It's very, very difficult to get a trial. And one of the reasons why it's difficult to get a trial is what I was explaining in my presentation for people who are incarcerated. It's very difficult. And then on top of it, you get the a lot of times witnesses don't come and then the case can get dismissed, which is great. And then other times you get the case where, prosecutor is on the day of trial making you that offer you can't refuse. When they're making you probation and then after trial they're looking at 2 years or 3 years. It's very difficult to want to go through a trial. So I think in general it's very hard to get a trial at all.
I wanted to say, I don't remember which of the, do you call your pieces poems, Christopher?
Yeah.
I was very touched, particularly, I was touched by I think it might have been the one you wrote to your mother, maybe. You spoke about not understanding when you were on the hustle, what you were doing kind of at the time, and that later it came to you when you were getting that last dollar from that woman that her little girl wasn't getting any food. And and you think about youth and how stupid we are when we're young and how thoughtless, we just are. And it was very touching to me, your journey, and that you took us on that journey with you, and that you were able to write your mother, and because obviously your mother cared so much, and you shared that with us tonight, and it was very beautiful and very touching with me, and I appreciate it. And thank you.
Thank you.
In the corner.
Yeah, I just want to commend everybody on stage, of course, especially you two. I don't know y'all names, but that. Yeah, that was big what you did down the State House, man. That's some real stuff. The reason I say that is because I don't know if a lot of people know this, but slavery was not totally abolished in this country. Slavery was abolished except for people who are incarcerated. If you're incarcerated, you could become slaves, because after slavery was abolished, you had a brief period of Reconstruction, which then a lot of policies were put into place, and then they had black holes, whereas though then Jim Crow came, and Jim Crow stayed on the books till, I don't know, 1964, 65, and then after that was taken care of. That's when you notice a spike in the incarceration rates, because it had stayed the same. Prison rates stayed the same all the way through that period, from slavery all the way up to the 70s. But as soon as they got rid of Jim Crow, that's when it started to skyrocket. That's when it started skyrocketing, because there was policies that changed again, 3 strikes and you're out, war on drugs and all this. But it seems like we've adapted and we've educated ourselves towards that. But it seems like the new thing now is this gang thing, you know? And this is the new thing to incarcerate the next generation, you know? Label them as gangs. And I grew up the street. I was part of the drug era, you know? I worked down here, and probably more drugs were sold to Brown University through Fox Point and East Side than, I'm telling you, I know, because I was one of them. I live on the East Side. I grew up here. I worked down Brown all my life. I know this. But nobody from Brown really got incarcerated during that period. Only people from Fox Point and East Side did. But it seems like this new thing is the gang thing, and I started a program, so I'm looking at the numbers in the Providence School Department, because I got access to all this information. And on the Richter scale, the gang thing rates like this in the school department. Seems like the major issues are sex, drugs, not going to school, and graduation rates. But it seems like now, especially during this election time, everybody's talking about gangs and violence. So I just wanted to commend you for that, because if you don't stand up to stuff like that, they sneak it under the radar, and that's how the next generation just gets wiped out. So thank you.
Not really sure that I have my thought fully formulated, but the first thing I want to say is that I really love the way Chris and the bass player and the dance really blended together to tell the story. It was that you almost, I mean, obviously you can have one without the other, but it was really amazing and beautiful to see how each one played off of one another. And I guess I'm curious to know how much, I know you guys rehearse obviously, but how much of it is rehearsed and how much of it does have some essence of spontaneity. And a completely different thought was also, as we talk about, you know, the youth, and we talk about incarceration, we talk about the legal system, and how many people just really don't understand how this system works, and that we don't educate, we don't incorporate so many things that, you know, were really presented here tonight, are things that are absent from education, period, like completely absent from education. And maybe, you know, in your neighborhood, you're very fortunate to have something like PrYSM, where you can be educated. You're pulled in and said, okay, we're going to teach you about this. But in neighborhoods like, say, where my kids grow up, it's almost like we don't want to tell them anything. We don't want to talk about race. We don't want to talk about difference. We don't want to talk about socioeconomics. We don't want to talk about the judicial system. We want to hide it, so that nobody knows what's happening. There's like this, the division is created through ignorance. But anyway, that was just kind of my thought. And it all kind of plays off of the performance as well as the speaking, but really, anyway. So can you answer the first
question? The writing just happened over the course of years. Those 3 pieces, the first one was a letter to my mother, and I decided to turn into a poem. The third one happened before the second one. Don't know why. And then the second one, I had to go straight. I had to clear my head of. When I got out of prison, I was not able to be touched. Like people think I have a very abrasive personality now, and they don't even know me when I got out of prison. It's like, you know, I didn't get along with my sisters or anybody, so I had to like clear my head of a lot of stuff before that second piece got written. And it wasn't spontaneous, it was, or maybe it was just more that the time for them to come, they come. And me and Rochelle work, and when we work, I don't know her process. I think she's just plucking and playing, and then.
Because I listen to, well, your words comes first, and that's what triggers what I'm going to do on the bass. But this time it was the first time I actually played with dancers, and that's the Every Theater that put everything together, and that was a new way of thinking for me and playing. That was really good to see how someone is dancing around music. Oh, I'm going to do something different from, not only like from what I hear, but from what I see. And that happened like within, what, 2 weeks or 10 weeks?
In 2 weeks, like a little less than 2 weeks, I told Sophia I wanted to work with Everett, and he said, "Oh, just send me an email." And then like a week or two went by, and I was just like, all right, I'm gonna hit him on Facebook. And then I hit up Aaron and Dorothy, and Dorothy, first thing she did was make me feel uncomfortable. What'd she say? No, she was like, we're just gonna play. We're just gonna play. I want you to just say whatever comes to your mind while Soap dances and she plays. And I'm like, no, but if I'm a freestyle artist, I want to sound professional. Like, I'm from the block. You know, when you freestyle, you want to sound like you're coming off paper. You want to sound good. I'm like, I don't want to sound like I'm, don't know what I'm talking about. So, but that happened, and we got to, I guess it built trust because we were able to do that. And I don't know what Soap's process was.
I mean, the thing with poetry is he spit these images that just come to your mind that you can visualize, which is great. But what he has never done was bring this to theater, because he's a slam poet, wonderful slam poet. He was amazing. So he said this thing, he had a 3-minute time limit. So when he speaks, and then Dorothy's like, all right, now slow it down. Slow it down. Now you get to actually feel your poem. Feel it. And then when the music, the bass comes on, now there's this droning sound, and now you get another essence of it. This depth now. Now you can hear this, and you can see this. My part was to bring the visuals to life, and their parts as well. So now you have these 3 aspects that create this big, phenomenal piece just from this one poem to be something that's more in depth. So now you have, it touches all your senses, you can actually be on the street. You sit. The jail scene it brought me back to being in there, so I was like, I wasn't dancing though, but so it brought me back to that, and everything was all, it's real to us. And the spontaneity part, because I'm a freestyle artist and dancing. Put on music, I'll do it. Give me poetry, I'll dance to it. Play with rocks, I'll dance to it. So, come on, I can do that. So I'm used to it. I grew up through the Everett School since I was 15 in '95, so I've been doing that. So this was new to him. But what we had, the spontaneity came in when the last piece came on. Not the third one, but the Dear Mr. President.
Yeah.
So, and that is so relevant to today's society right now and what's going on in the news and stuff like that. So I was like, we didn't get a chance to actually deal with it, so we just took it and did it anyway. So we finished this piece today, right?
Yeah.
And he read it, and I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna freestyle to it. So that was the spontaneity part, and so that was not rehearsed at all.
I also want to address that last little bit you said, because the reason why Dear Mr. President exists is because of Trayvon Martin and Jordan Davis and the guy out in Texas who they're figuring out now that the sheriff's department is a cover-up and all of this other stuff. This is going to sound really off the wall and has nothing to do with what it is, but I really feel like, one, I want to get rid of Black History Month because of your statement. We shouldn't have a Black History Month. Our history, my history, should be incorporated every day in the school system. This way, we separate that whole separation between races. I mean, imagine if your kids knew just as much as my race as I know about yours, and therefore, when it came down to a Black kid getting beat up by cops, you don't feel desensitized to the situation. You feel connected to it. You feel more human. You feel like that, that's my people's. More so than, they ain't got nothing to do with me, I don't know. There's a distance in our communities. And I feel like I feel like that's one of the main things is like the separation of the races, and it starts in the education system, in the early education system. The second thing is the desensitization of the violence that's going on. Why the hell are we not rioting right now? Why the hell are we not? You know, and that's an issue that I have. And it's because we're so used to black men being killed. We're just really used to it. I mean, it doesn't make any sense if a white woman went out right now, God forbid, but if a white woman went out right now and just screamed, you can scream whatever you want. Somebody will be there to help you. If I go out there and scream right now, it's just like, oh, whatever. You know? Just another angry black man. Yeah. So like, I feel like that my main thing right now is because we have all of these different issues, the LGBT, I don't want to forget a letter, LGBT, thank you. Because we have these issues, and then we have women's rights, which was just under fire in the last election, something awful, and then we have, you know, these issues of race. My whole thing is stop separating these issues and put them all together, and let's talk about human rights for a minute, you know, and let's make it happen like that under one banner. Because as long as we're separated, we're going to have a problem. And the bigger issue is how they're silencing black men's voices right now is corporate prisons. I don't even know if y'all know about corporate prisons. There's like 3 main corporate prisons right now who got lobbyists sitting in D.C. right now. A judge 2 years ago just got caught out there. He had a contract for sending kids to prison just because he was getting kickbacks. You know, there's 99 billions in our cell. We are all 99 billions. We're all one body right here. We're one person right here, just like ourselves. You know, we are all held together by whatever our purpose is. But whatever it is that keeps us separated, you know, people are going to go to the east side, and people are going to the south side. Those are the things that keep us separated, and it keeps this system in place. So, you know, I just feel like if we started at the education, at the early education, real early education, get rid of Black History Month, incorporate my history in the school system all year round, you know, and not just my history, everybody that's coming into this country right now. There's no such thing as an illegal human. You know, they got these illegal aliens. There's no such thing as an illegal human. Undocumented Americans, you know, whatever you want to call them. I just feel like this is where we need to work.
To close it on, they're going to have an improv jam. You want one more? All right, one more. Okay.
Actually, Chris, you were leading right into what I was going to say. Actually, I had 2 questions. I was going to ask if you started writing when you were in prison or in Desert Storm or after. Then the other piece was you're talking about starting the education early. And I was going to ask if anyone on the panel, including the public defender, has any ideas or suggestions as to what people in this room can do. Are there any actions that people in this room can begin to take to address these issues? I mean, we definitely need to start when they're younger, like my man who's getting ready to leave. But, you know, we're here now. What can we do other than...
I started writing, in all actuality, in 4th grade. I was clinically depressed. But it didn't really take off until prison. When I sat in prison and sat down and writing. And the first thing that I'm doing right now to make a difference is I'm boycotting anything coming out of Florida, including orange juice. So, you know, people are like, well, what's that going to do? You're only going to hurt the poor people of Florida. Well, it's going to get to it'll get to the richer people in Florida. You know, as much as I love Disney World, I love it to death. I'm not going anymore. Like, these laws have to change. And I'm writing a letter to LeBron and all of these people. And I'm like, look, you know, you're in Miami right now. You do not notice what's going on. So that's what I'm doing. I don't know for anybody else. That's what I'm doing.
We're gonna have one more, and then we're gonna.
I have an answer to that.
Okay.
First, I want to give props to everybody who's up here. Thank you for the work you're doing. And in the answer to getting the history into the schools, that's a project I've been working on for a long time. If you go to Facebook, Amistad.ri, I'm posting a lot of resources and information on how we can make this happen. We just put in legislation, I believe, last week for the 1696 Historical Commission to get African American history put into the curriculum, and we're gonna need a lot of support around that. So once we get the hearing, we're gonna.
And we have a mailing list outside. If you guys want, anyone wants to sign it and be on our list, then we'll pass along this kind of information as we go. I don't want to take too long because they do have another improv jam happening in here. So thanks everybody for coming.